Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of the Esports Racing League Premier Series, live from the virtual Talladega Superspeedway in Talladega, Alabama, for round number 9 of the first season of what has been a phenomenal campaign. I'm Justin Prince. I'll be joined in just a few moments by the voice of Podium Esports, James Pike. Our producer tonight is Ryan Bauer for what should be a great race this evening. First things first, it is Talladega. A very difficult super speedway as these drivers get all set to go in the mix of the championship fight. Let's bring in Ryan first things first. An exciting racetrack here on the docket.
Yeah, Talladega is always going to be full of excitement. I think it's going to be interesting to see what all these drivers can do out there tonight. Looks like we've got a little bit of a bigger field than what we've had the last couple of weeks. I think that'll provide for some good quality racing tonight, and I just can't wait to see what these guys can do.
Absolutely, these drivers always live for a week such as Super Speedway Week on the iRacing service, and tonight is no exception. A very large field of drivers all set to attack the banks here at Talladega Super Speedway. Let's take a look towards the Google Earth to find out more about Talladega Super Speedway and what is a beautiful 2.66 mile venue in Talladega, Alabama. Located in a former airfield base at one point in its early existence, was constructed in 1968 and opened in 1969. Sees bankings of 33 degrees in turns 1 and 2. Turn 3 and turn 4 is about 32.5 degrees of banking. The trial will feature 16.5 degrees of banking and 3 degrees down the back straightaway. Today's race distance as well, 65 laps. In sim time and date is May the 15th, the default day, and just about 3:15 p.m. local time. These drivers are all set for what should be a cracking race. These drivers continuing to prep for what should be some great racing. As you can tell, the weather conditions nearly perfect for tonight. 76 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the track temp. Not a single drop in humidity up in the sky for tonight's green flag. They do have to deal with a bit of wind, though, at about 5 miles per hour. Now, Ryan, we've seen some competitive racing throughout the season, whether it's been you in the commentary box or you in the producer's chair throughout the season. Jimmy Mullis enters tonight with the points lead and the only driver in the top 7 with the W. Brandon McKissick, Braxton DeWeese, Zach Novak, Alex Bell round out the top 5 entering tonight. Your thoughts on what you've seen in the championship fight as we approach the closing stages?
Yeah, it's been very exciting here in the ERL all season long, and one driver that I'm going to be on the lookout for tonight, we saw him his first appearance in the ERL last week. That's Cody McCauley in that number 62 machine. I know I've raced with Cody quite a bit, and I know he's very good here on the plate tracks with drafting and everything else too. Another driver to watch out for tonight, as always, to be on the lookout for to perform well is Mr. Blake Reynolds in that number 3 machine. I've raced with Blake in the Podium Esports Daytona 500 heat races this year, and I know you guys have seen him in the Coke series and everything else too. He definitely knows how to get it done on these plate tracks, Justin.
Absolutely. Drivers still have about a minute or so before they get the green flag. Just 10 drivers to set qualifying times. But what are the main things to keep in mind tonight? What are the largest fields of the entire campaign tonight? Lots of different drivers you may have seen in earlier parts of the season and or getting ready for their first starts of the season. Some of them of note: Andrew Freenosh, one of the drivers for Aegis, a teammate of Steve Durham, and competes in multiple different series, including in Road to Pro with Lowline Racing. He's in the field tonight. Among some of the newcomers as well, keep an eye on drivers like Kobe Wells. He came away with the victory, Ryan, in the Sportsman's race in the Xfinity cars on Monday.
Yeah, definitely got to keep a lookout for him too, and I'd love to hear about the sportsman drivers from the ERL getting to mix it up with the pros here in the Elite Series, or Premier Series, I should say. Just really excited, man. I'm kind of at a loss for words. I know what these drivers are going through right now. I've done a lot of plate racing over the years, and I know it's can cause anxiety, but it's always going to be exciting for the fans at home.
The excitement is about to get to its optimal peak because it's time to look at how they'll start for tonight's action from Talladega, Alabama. Starting on the pole tonight, it's a newcomer. It's Eric Heater. Coming into tonight, looking to make a splash in the 55 machine, put in a 50.461 in qualifying. That was about half a tenth quicker than the rest of the grouping. Lucas Graham qualified in second, Andrew Ramos in third. Austin Dillon starts in fourth position tonight. Made one of his first starts of the season last race at Richmond. Blake Reynolds starts in fifth with Zach Novak in sixth. Cody McCauley starts in seventh with Anthony Alfredo, Landon Huffman, and Austin Craven be the only 10 drivers tonight, Ryan, to put in times.
The rest of the field that you'll see out there tonight chose to start at the back. Quite a few of them. See Logan Clampett, Andrew Farnage, Brandon McKissick, Briar LaPrade, Jimmy Mullis, Jose Solis, Alex Bell, Nick Olson, Kyle Smalley, and Eric Stanford round out your top 20 tonight. They'll see Kobe. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Braxton DeWeese will start 21st, Ryan Kendrick in 22nd, John Midget 23rd, RJ Williams 24th, Nicholas Hughes 25th, with Alex Chamberlain in 26th, Steve Durham, Greg McConey, Alexander Kronke, and Andrew Freenosh start shotgun on the field tonight. Now, that's a look at how they'll start for tonight's ERL Premier Series race. Once again, as to be reminded, 65 laps of the distance. Keep in mind, though, there is a fuel limit of 75% of the optimal tank, about 14 gallons. For those who are tuning in for the Leaf Filter Replacement Series race last night, that came into play for a potential two-stopper for tonight's race. Now, like to bring in the voice of Podium Esports once more, James Pike. Glad to have you with us for tonight's action once more for what should be a great one.
And thank you, Justin, and thank you, Ryan, and a big hello to all of you watching on the ERL Twitch channel as we get set for the 9th round of the ERL Premier Series. The Dude Wipes 175, first partner of the ERL on board this evening. And I think there are two interesting points to look at. When I look at the qualifying board and when I look at the race length here, it's interesting that we see 10 drivers qualify out of the 30 that are starting. So few drivers opting to take time. Looks like to me it's a very clear and obvious sign that a lot of these drivers want to hang towards the back and avoid all of the mayhem and all of the madness. And then, like you said, with those smaller fuel tanks, Justin Prince, we saw it come into play in the replacements last night. We had a green, white checker. It will definitely come into play this evening. This is certainly going to be a two-stop race, but if you try and split it halfway, you might leave yourself in big trouble if we get a green, white, and checkered. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it on two stops. I think this might be a case where you have to wait until maybe about lap 10, lap 11 or so before the window, I think, even opens to where you can feel safe on making it a two-stop race, even with a green, white, checkered. Beyond that, 76 degrees air temp, 99 degrees track temp, so a little warmer, but not necessarily as warm as we've seen in recent ERL races. Winds to the east at 4 miles an hour, humidity of 35%, so actually a drier day here on iRacing Day, May 15th, 2020, around 3:30 afternoon, or 3:30 in the afternoon local time in Talladega, Alabama. So lots of bits and pieces I think we'll need to keep track of as this race progresses.
And remember, you mentioned that sponsor coming on board tonight. Of course, they're competing for that care package as the grand prize to the race winner for tonight. So that is something these drivers are definitely going to want to try and come away with, especially with what we've seen Dude Wipes do for the sim racing community, especially with some of the drivers they're also a part of on multiple different cars for tonight's race.
I'll be honest, I need the Dude Wife shirt that Anthony Alfredo was rocking on Saturday during Saturday Night Thunder. That thing was impressive, to say the least. That man was styling while he was racing. I don't know if anybody else caught it, but certainly one of those cases where if you get your hands on something that good looking, make sure you share it with the community a little bit. Don't keep it to yourself. As we get set for 65 laps of racing here at Talladega Superspeedway. We get set for action with 30 of the best in the Esports Racing League Premier Series live tonight from the biggest and baddest and fastest racetrack in all of NASCAR. Pace car off pit road. It's all on Eric Heater to bring us green flag racing, and we're underway in Alabama with the Dude Whites 175, and it was a great start on the outside for Lucas Graham in the 44, who immediately jumps up, gets a car length ahead of the 55, but to no avail because Austin Dillon didn't get the greatest of starts himself, and now he'll have to get connected with Lucas Graham, and it might jump to the inside because that's where his Team Dillon Esports driver Blake Reynolds sits third in line, and Reynolds immediately drops to the bottom, so we know his strategy, Justin. He's going right to the back of this field to avoid the mess at the front.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the two different strategies you see coming to play early on in these types of races here on the iRacing service. You elect to either stay up at the front, keep good track position, try and stay in front of the potential mess, or you like to be the other half of the field you see scattered already. Stay away from possible trouble, especially since it's already 2-3 wide and lots of dartiness throughout the field already in that top group.
A lot of people shuffling all over the place. Look at this run on the top side. 3 wide for the race lead on the second lap. A little bit of contact between Andrew Ramos and Cody McCauley in the 62 behind him. Here comes Jimmy Mullis in the middle looking to pull Anthony Alfredo. Zach Novak right there in front of him. You figure the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers are going to try and link up, and they do. There goes Novak to the high side to get joined up with Mullis, and those two will go to the front and leave Lucas Cram seeking help from the 55 of Barry Keeter.
Yeah, already seen some of the alliances come into play with Novak and Mullis looking like they want to try and dominate that bottom line, or maintain control rather, because that is so vital with controlling the momentum and essentially the rhythm of the pack. If you can have your teammate in front of you lead that group, it makes it much more easier to control how the rest of the race rolls instead of, say, being scatter plotted across the field.
I think the interesting thing here between Mullis and Novak is that they aren't necessarily lined up nose to tail, and that instead they're electing to control both lanes by running at the front of each, which actually could be a little bit more effective so long as no one gets to run in that third lane and jumps to the outside to get around these two. But you can already see their strategy at play. They're just going to make sure that nobody else gets around them.
Yeah, you hit it like right on the nose there. As talked about, a lot of times you do that on the bottom, as I just mentioned, but it looks like that's breaking apart, though, because some of the drivers are getting hot. McCauley had to back off. You can't push for too long without overheating the engine, and now Mullis has to regroup on that top line now with Alfredo helping.
Mullis now working to the top side. Looks like Alfredo beginning to jump in. We've seen that dude like Chevy Camaro make some moves early on in this race. He was fast at Richmond last Saturday night with the same colors. It's Saturday Night Thunder as they nearly go sideways. Looks like the 46 didn't quite get lined up, and in the meantime, he's going to jump ahead of Lucas Cram and bring Alfredo and Brian LaPrade with him as Mullis sends the 44 right through the middle, and it looks like he's going to have to catch Logan Clem in the 99 to get back to the front.
Remember, when it comes to Mullis and along with Novak, it was talked about on Saturday Night Thunder by Alfredo. He tried a bold strategy. The strategy call where he stayed on the tires was the decision of the top two right now. The drivers in control of the bubble. Seems like Alfredo was committed to try and help. The problem is he's overheating, and now the two teammates are hooked up on the bottom side where everyone else shuffles.
Everybody else shuffling around and bouncing around. All these rear ends of these Cup cars looking a bit unsteady even early on in this race as Cram gets the push from Logan Crampett to go to the front. So the 44 in very good shape. Brian LaPrade right there behind the 99. You've also got Brandon McKissick in the 87 in line as well. McKissick, of course, second in points, 13 back of Jimmy Mullis for the lead in the Premier Series. As Mullis now goes to the top side, he's left his teammate Zach Novak on his own down low, and Mullis will jump outside to get around Lucas Cram and maybe, just maybe, lead at the straight.
Yeah, a bit of a drag race. Mullis, I think, got the lead lap that time by, but you got to remember, the more the drivers say lead these packs, the more fuel they burn. You go full throttle if you lead the head of the group. You're going maybe half throttle up to three-quarter throttle, in some cases even 90% throttle if you're staying in the draft. So the more you lead your specific line, the worse your fuel situation is going to be.
As everybody continues to push on, Jimmy Mullis and Zach Novak in control of that front lane. It's Lucas Cram down on the bottom as there goes Novak to the top side. So the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers again working together. They got a huge run on the outside with Logan Clampett. You've got three drivers in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series up top, and then a fourth in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro and Brian LaPrade. So plenty of experience either at or near the top level of sim racing, right there controlling both the inside and the outside early on in tonight's Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega, Justin.
I think this is going to continue on happening as this race goes on, because it's pretty clear the Richmond Raceway Esports machines want to stay up at the front as their strategy. They want to lead laps. They want to try and keep track position. compare that to our teams. It was talked about a bit during the pre-race, James, that we have a few new drivers tonight. Steve Durham has one of his Aegis teammates, for example, and Andrew Freenosh. He's lined up with him in 22nd and 23rd position specifically. So that's where the team strategies of laying low and trying to be active come into play.
And it goes back to the old theory of if you're racing here in the plate racing situations and you're running a Daytona or a Talladega, the two general schools of thought are you either want to be up at the very front, like the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers are, or at the very back. You just want to avoid being in the middle so that you don't end up in the middle of the wrecks when they come. We know the big one's going to happen at some point tonight. Somebody's going to get into somebody else and spin out and collect at least 5 or 6 cars along suit. Just a matter of when, just a matter of where, and are you in the right position to avoid it all when it goes down?
Here's the problem with that thought process, though, at the same time, James. Not everybody can be at the back of the field. Eventually, somebody in theory is going to be in the middle for obvious reasons. So that's where you see drivers, say, laying back, maybe staying just at the edge of the draft of these lead groups that are going side by side up at the front of the field. You don't want to go back far enough where you save a little bit of fuel, yes, but end up losing the draft and never see the lead pack again unless you get a caution.
One of the cases that you just have to be mindful of as we work the 9th lap of 65 in this Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega. Novak and Mullis again doing a nice job, and I think very impressively shifting between strategies. It's either control both lanes or be lined up nose to tail, and we'll see what Mullis does here. He'll jump down to the bottom. He got that big run off of Logan Clampett, and I think that to me is a pretty strong indicator of where and how they're going to shuffle the strategies at the front. It's going to be all dependent on who gets the run behind these two and how they get pushed. If they get a big run like we just saw Mullis get from Logan Clampett going into the tri-oval, then one of the Richmond Raceway Esports cars will drop in front of the other. If not, one of them will jump out of line as there's a little bit of contact between Cram and Clampett. One of them will jump out of line and jump to that top side so that they can control the speed of both lanes.
You hit it right on the head, and this is something communicating right there. Novak doing exactly that. Move up to the middle line, in turn, be able to go back in front of Mullis, help Mullis save fuel in turn. It's just a matter, though, of making sure you don't allow drivers like Clampett to get runs, and he just timed it up perfectly. They keep on doing this, they'll be in the same fuel window for when these drivers have to start coming down for fuel.
How frustrating is this if you're Logan Clampett? You know exactly what the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers are doing, and yet at the same time, there's just not enough support up on the top side to get around them and form a team to beat them. You have good drivers up there. Brian LaPrade is there. You've got Cody McCauley up there. Eric Heater is there as well. You've got folks that can make it happen and form a group strong enough and I think cohesive enough that can work together to get around the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers, but they just haven't, I think, put it together quite yet.
Yeah, not quite yet. It seems as though LaPrade is being a bit conservative, if anything. Doesn't want to push too hard. Is actually leaving a bit of an air bubble between him and the back end of the 99. If he pushes strong enough, he might be able to get Clampett clear. I think he just doesn't feel quite confident on doing that quite yet, since the speeds are already massive. Some of the fastest of the entire week into 200s the whole way around the racetrack.
Blitzing lap times. The last time for Logan Clampett was in the 46-second bracket as he finally gets down and gets a big enough run from LaPrade and company to jump ahead of Jimmy Mullis and Zach Novak. So for maybe the first time in these last 5 or 10 laps, maybe the first time tonight, it is not a Richmond Raceway Esports car patrolling the front. And like you said, all it took was a little bit of extra help from LaPrade to at least break the stranglehold that the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers had at the front of this pack.
Exactly. He needed LaPrade to give him that little bit of a push, communicate, saying, come on, give me a shove. Now here's the problem for LaPrade because he helped Clampett. He doesn't have the numbers, and now he becomes essentially the helper car for that top line. And Novak, bit dicey there, still is in a good position to retake the lead.
We're talking about dicey moments there on the back straightaway. The teammates nearly got into each other, and Novak nearly doored Jimmy Mullish. But for the moment, they continue to roll on, and Clampett is still your leader. Might have been a little bit of damage that Mullish picked up in that incident, too. And indeed, he does have some damage to the right side of that number 46. Makes me wonder if, by extension, Novak's got any damage. But looks like that 90 is clean, but just a little bit for Jimmy Mullish to worry about as Novak gets back to the front.
That's Novak up towards the front, yes, but the tricky thing is, for Mullis's sake, he's now boxed in, so he can't do what he was doing before with Novak, rotate back and forth, unless he, say, latches onto some of the lines. But look what's happening on that top line. Alfredo and Austin Dillon are starting to make it 3 wide.
Leave it to the Team Dillon Esports folks and the Team Dillon management folks to start getting together. And I'm looking for the third car in that group. Blake Reynolds in the 3 is at the very back of this lead pack. So Alfredo and Dillon get hooked together for a moment, but then break it up. But I think they're waiting for the 3 to get up there and make something happen as Novak gets back to the point. Now Jimmy Mullish has gone all the way up to the top side with help from Anthony Alfredo and Austin Dillon, but they all get covered by the 55 of Eric Heater. And now it's Brian LaPrade, who nearly went back through the middle, but then got some help, and now Heater might be the one stuck on the outside. You don't necessarily know who's going to the back just yet, Justin.
Yeah, remember Heater, one of the first times we've seen him this entire season, mind you, so I don't think some of the drivers up towards the front may have been comfortable going 2-3 wide with him, so they just shuffled him out, essentially pushed him out of that lead line and said, you have to earn that respect. Go back to the line, to the back of the line you go.
To the back of the line you go. To the front of the line goes Logan Clampett, or at least that's what he's attempting. He's got good help from LaPrade and Mullis and Alfredo and Dillon on that top side. They dart and weave just a bit. It was Novak who led the lap by 3/1000ths of a second that last time by. Not much of a margin between the 90 and the 99, but just enough for Novak to get another lap led, which may be beneficial in the points as we see Mullis now looking up top before thinking better and dropping back in line.
It just almost looks like a chess match up towards that front. If you want to go and take the lead and control the bottom line, you move up to the middle, you're likely taking the lead within a lap. Then, if you're the car that's next in line at the bottom, you take advantage of the amount of speed lost by losing just that one car. It's like a revolving door, almost a conveyor belt almost, of race cars back and forth. If I was some of the drivers, say, who want to get moving up towards the front of the field before pit stops start in a few laps or so, I'd get up to that middle line and join the back end of that train.
You think that would be the smart call as Novak and Clampett continue to roll on. Lucas Cram is there as well. We see Mullis continuously ducking out on exit of turn 2, looking to the outside of LaPrade, looking for some sort of room, some sort of move, something from any one of the Team Dillon management drivers behind him that might push him up towards the front, but nothing yet. So it's still Toyota up in the front line. Oh, Lucas Cram blew the motor. Lucas Cram blew the motor, and the 44 blows his engine on lap 17. And here comes Logan Clampett to the inside to get around Zach Novak as chaos ensues. And I think these front lines are going to shake up a good bit as Cram falls out of the race.
Unbelievable, and this is around the time you usually see drivers blow their engines by pushing a little bit too hard in the short to mid run of the race. In the middle of stints, unfortunate though, some of the drivers got significant damage. McKissick now with some back bumper and front end damage on his machine, so he's going to have to deal with some issues on suck-up ability and temps the rest of the race.
Not much I think McKissick could have done. He was just stuck behind that group as Cram all of a sudden slowed down and they all had to check up. And now McKissick is going to have to find a way to sit on pit road and get some of the damage fixed, I think. He's going to be just about useless out on his own when he's trying to be the lead car in a draft. He can suck up behind people and be a pusher, but he cannot be the pushy because there's so much nose damage on that car. It will limit his top speed by somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 miles an hour, I think, just off the nose damage alone.
Absolutely, and keep in mind, there's still some drivers in the back part of this grouping who have been watching this and saying, this is why I stay in the back until the final, until we're good to go on green in terms of fuel. Eric Stanford now has the chance to hook up with some of his Aegis teammates, in fact, because of some of that shuffling. He did try and go to the middle line at one point, then went back to the bottom line once things got crazy.
So now that they've reformed on lap 19 of 65, it is Novak and Clampett in control, then Laprade and Jimmy Mullis up top. And I think the biggest thing that did is it moved some of these drivers down to the bottom. You've got Austin Craven in the 30 machine, the other Dude Wipes machine in this field, now running up top about where Anthony Alfredo was, and Austin Dillon is now down on the bottom lane trying to push Alfredo himself. So you've got a lot of the Team Dillon folks up there. By the way, Blake Reynolds, the fourth car of the Team Dillon group, sitting in the 14th position.
Yeah, and taking a look now at some of these drivers, in fact, you just referenced to, when it comes to Reynolds, he's been playing it much more safer. Has actually gone onto the apron a couple times in his Coca-Cola machine. I think he hasn't felt quite confident yet to be able to make his way up towards the front because of how many drivers going 2-3 wide in some moments of this race. I think he knows, though, these drivers are going to be ducking down to pit pretty soon. Looking like he's starting to try and push his way up towards the front methodically and try and take advantage of the top line breaking apart.
And there goes Anthony Alfredo to the top side. Remember, Alfredo won the season opener at Daytona in the ERL Premier League. It was the first race of the year. It was the first race we had this season on a restrictor plate track. So he gets a big shove. Look at Brian Laprade pushing the 33 to the front. And the question now is whether or not Alfredo will drop down to the inside, but instead he'll stay up top. So Novak will get the big push from Clampett to the inside. Here comes Austin Dillon in the number 3 car down to the bottom to try and, I don't know, maybe run side by side, maybe potentially help Alfredo. The Team Dillon cars trying to work together. Austin Craven and Blake Reynolds are side by side just a little bit further back. So you've got that 4-car team. That may be the biggest association and maybe the most natural team of all the cars out here tonight. And we know how well Richmond Raceway Esports have worked together. Have to watch out for the Team Dillon management group as well, whether or not you're the esports driver in Blake Reynolds, the owner in Austin Dillon, or any of the clients, the backroom staff in Austin Craven and Anthony Alfredo.
Yep.
Those three, I think, at some point are going to hook up just by nature of association.
Yeah, but take a look at how many drivers are already ducked down to this bottom line here. And this is the great sign, James, of drivers are already thinking about the pit stop window. The only drivers up on that middle line are the ones who feel comfortable. In fact, a couple have just peeled off in the back part of the field.
So lap 22 is the number for some of these drivers to come down pit road. And amongst this group, Eric Stanford is in, Andrew Friedas is in, John Midget is in, Nick Hughes has come down for service, Alec Chamberlain is in, Ryan Kendrick is in as well. So about 7 or 8 cars coming in for service. And now we're starting to see strategy play out.
Yep, and this is why some of the drivers have already jumped in the bottom side. It looks like McCauley and Olsen kind of want to go. The problem is they're also, I think, concerned about if they're going to even be able to make it to the pit lane if they were to try and charge. The main concern, though, is what do you do if you're Ramos, Laprade, and McKissick now? They're stuck on the top side. If they run out of fuel, they've got nowhere to go and a couple more peeling off.
Got a few more coming down pit road this time as well as these drivers make that slow crawl. It's Greg McConaughey, Kyle Smalley, and Alexander Krunke in the 57. So another trio in for service. Novak still in control at the very front of this field, and only 3 cars on that top side now. Everybody really has gotten to the bottom, so I think everybody preparing for pit stops. We'll see who comes in this time by.
Yeah, indeed, and some of those drivers, I think, might have tried to play the strategy card, essentially, because they think they can make it a few more laps than what we've seen them already do for some of these groups. It's just the matter of trying to gain separation. Already more drivers ducking down. Huffman's going in.
Landon Huffman coming in along with Cody McCauley and his Total Advantage teammate RJ Williams. That one of the big stories over the past few weeks is the Total Advantage and Landon Huffman have partnered up to form a new team with intentions on getting drivers into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for 2021. A lot of competitors for that group in Road to Pro this year as Novak continues to lead over Clampett. Austin Dillon has worked his way up to 3rd. He's got Anthony Alfredo in tow.
Now it becomes the question, when do they duck down? I think right now they're in a decent window to make it a confident 2-stopper from here based on the numbers. We'll see if anyone peels off. Yes, indeed, a bunch of them.
Just about everybody. It's going to be easier to tell you the 3 that won't, and it's going to be Andrew Ramos, Brandon McKissick, and Jose Solis Jr. Everybody else in, so Novak, Clampett, Jimmy Mullis, Brian LaPrade, Eric Heater, Blake Reynolds, Anthony Alfredo, Austin Dillon, Nick Olson in the 24, Austin Craven, Alex Bell, all in for service along with Colby Wells and Braxton DeWeese.
Here's the concern, though, for Clampett. He did go into the middle of the grass in the infield at one point on his pit entry. It's going to be curious if he gets a penalty. And meanwhile, Austin Craven missed his pit box.
So Craven misses his pit box. We'll wait and see how that group forms once they get back onto the racetrack and when these final three cars come in, looking for Ramos and McKissick and Solis, and they respond now. So here they come in for service on lap 26 of 65, and the next cars to watch will be the group that Jimmy Mullis will lead out onto the racetrack. He was the first one off of pit road ahead of Logan Clampett and Briar LaPrade.
Here's the thing, though. If you end up undercutting some of the drivers, yes, you won't be as good in terms of the fuel mileage throughout the race, James, but it will cycle you in most cases in front of some of the drivers. That's been the case for a couple of them. In fact, Clampett's got a run on Mullis.
Clampett was trying to take advantage of the outlap and get around Jimmy Mullis, and then Brian LaPrade completely dumped him on the top side and decided to go with Mullis in the 46. So those two get hooked up to the 19 in the 46, and a big charge coming from behind. Landon Huffman leading the next pack, and that's where you'll find R.J. Williams, Eric Stanford, Anthony Freenage, Blake Reynolds, Greg McConey, and Alexander Krunke all in tow, trying to catch up to this lead group.
Indeed, so they were able to get such a good pit entry to be able to get this advantage. Some of the drivers who did the undercut strategy, mind you, had pit stop lane times in 3 seconds slower. And those are the last drivers who ended up ducking down. They just passed on by, so no positions lost for the most part for Mullis and co. But big position gains for Landon Huffman and a couple others.
So we continue to work our way through this Dude Wipes 175. Brandon McKissick now down on the bottom trying to get help at the back of this pack. But Jimmy Mullis and company with all that momentum, it was impossible to hang on. They're all beginning to reform at the front of this and maybe go 3 wide. Logan Clampett's got absolutely no help in the middle. We'll see if he falls to the back of this group. But as it stands, he's still running side by side because Landon Huffman can't quite get hooked up on the top side with R.J. Williams in that 37. So they drop down to that second lane and get in behind Clampett and then duck to the outside of Clampett to potentially leave him in the middle going backwards again.
Yeah, they made it clear they don't want to work with Clampett right now at this point. And this is definitely an issue if you're Clampett. He's got good speed, but it looks like Mullis, he's starting to play defense now.
Mullis starting to really make the rear bumper of that Coca-Cola Energy Toyota Camry wide. He jumped right up in front of Logan Clampett and slammed the door in his face. And those two will now get back down to the inside as we've got Toyota Power down bottom, and then we've got Chevys and Fords up top between Landon Huffman, who now takes his turn at the front of that outside lane for the first time tonight, with R.J. Williams, his total advantage teammate, and Blake Reynolds, one of the Team Dillon Esports drivers, in tow.
Yeah, this is getting pretty crazy once again. Remember, they still have to go for one more pit stop. It's been a surprisingly very clean race so far. And again, strategy coming into play. Here's the thing, though. Just up in front of them is Zach Novak, who lost the pack after having a 52-second pit stop. That means he ended up speeding, along with Kyle Smalley and John Mitchell, who had to come down a second time.
And now it's almost a battle to make sure that you are the first car on the lead lap. If there's any sort of wrecks whatsoever, we'll see what happens. And even Jimmy Mullis can't stop to help his teammate as much as he'd like to. Novak will have to assimilate into this draft and find a place ahead of Smalley and Midget. He's in a decent spot, but Smalley's right there at the back end of this pack. So there's going to be a battle between the 90 and the 42 to be the first car one lap down, which could make the back of this pack very entertaining to watch.
Indeed, it could make it absolutely interesting here, and the reason we see Novak elect to stay down low is if you go up top, you're likely going to the back end of the pack. And if there's the other drivers that are laps down, which indeed they are in the pack, such as Smalley, you see in that blue 42, you're likely cycling behind them. So if you stay on the bottom line along that yellow, it forces the pack to swallow you up. That's what Novak wanted to have happen, and guess what? Mission accomplished. He's in the lucky dog spot as long as he maintains position.
And now it's the interesting battle of making sure that you maintain the provisional lucky dollar spot versus making sure that you don't get swept up in a wreck, Justin Prince. So if you're a driver and you're a Novak spot, how do you try and balance that out? Where do you position yourself in this pack to make the best of both worlds?
Well, I'm honestly one of the drivers who elect to say stay up towards the front because, yes, you have the risk of being involved in an incident if things get crazy, but at the same time, do you want to be one of those drivers who has to basically pound their way past 15, 20 drivers in the final 5-10 laps? I'm not quite sure. So I'm kind of one of those drivers where I want to stay up towards the front as a team, and because Novak's up towards the front, I think this has actually benefited Moas, and that's why I think Moas sacrificed that front car in the top line to work with Novak again and save fuel off him.
Part of it might have been to help Novak, but part of it was also the fact that Moas got a huge shot coming out of 4 and was sent right up the racetrack. He ended up in that third lane and dropped back just a bit, and at that point it was easier to drop in behind Novak and begin to work with his teammate once again than it was to try and jump back up towards the front and marshal this field from the inside line like we saw Boris Cook do yesterday in the leaf filter gutter protection replacements iRacing series. Blake Reynolds is now the man who leads the inside line. Logan Clampett is his help in P2 at this moment. Eric Heater might be the one stuck in the middle because the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers jumped to that third line, but then Clampett jumps to the middle, so now we've got 3 lanes working in the middle of 1 and 2 to try and get to the front.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting here because if Novak ends up leading that bottom line, he's in a position where he wouldn't need the lucky dog, and I think this is why Moas is pushing so hard. Get him in a position where they control the front bubble. Yes, again, just couldn't get clear though.
Couldn't quite get clear as the 46 and the 90 become unglued once again. Briar LaPrade, though, will jump to the top side and work with Jimmy Mullins once again. So not teammates, but they do have Toyota power together. I have a feeling that might be part of the reason why they work so well together. But it's also a case where, Briar's been a fixture. Patriot Briar here on Twitch, currently streaming on his channel, is in-car of this race, but he's been a fixture of the iRacing community and of the oval community with the Cup car in particular for a long, long time. And even though he's not in this year's eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, I think he's one of the drivers that a lot of these drivers that are in this series, the Blake Reynolds, the Zach Novaks, the Jimmy Mullises, have a lot of respect for. They're willing to work with because they know he's about as good as they come.
Yeah, he's a very clean race car driver and someone that is a very likable person, has worked with some of the top organizations throughout his time with the iRacing service. And that's one of the main benefits, too, of being in that situation. Remember talking to him a little bit as part of the eNASCAR Ignite series when he competed in that for one of the finales at Martinsville, when he mentioned that it was an absolute, he was surprised on how quickly things had developed. Mind you, at the time, he's only been on the service for a couple years, and now he's one of the favorites in RTP, as you mentioned.
He is one of the favorites in Road to Pro after last night's race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Derek Justice won top split. You can watch the replay on the Podium Esports Twitch channel after we wrap up coverage of the ERL tonight. But as we have crossed the halfway point, it's time to bring you tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which is brought to you as always by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation. Developed for the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series, with racing from the Australian Supercars, the Cars Tour right here on Podium Esports, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. At the stripe last time by, although these positions will shuffle greatly over the course of a lap, it was Logan Clampett who led Eric Heater and Blake Reynolds, then Andrew Freenash and Landon Huffman, your top 5, then Eric Stanford, Anthony Alfredo, Jimmy Mullis, Briar LaPrade, and Brandon McKissick, your top 10.
As I saw was 11th last time by the stride. Andrew Ramos in 12th. RJ Williams back in 13th. Kobe Wells in 14th. Nick Olson's 15th. Greg McConey 16th. Cronkite in 17th with Bell, Durham, and McCauley rounding out the top 20.
Alec Chamberlain runs in 21st. 22nd is Ryan Kendrick. Austin Dillon has slipped back to 23rd, and 24th is Nicholas Hughes. Braxton DeWeese runs in 25th. 26th is Zach Novak, the last car on the lead lap as it stands, and now a lap down. Kyle Smalley in 27th. Austin Craven in 28th. Those two one lap down. John Midget in 29th. He's 2 laps down, and then Lucas Cram blew the motor 20 laps ago and he scored 30th in this field. And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 130,000 drivers on the service and over 80 laser scan traction cars to choose from, iRacing is the original esports racing game. As the yellow flag comes out, you can visit iRacing.com today for more information to close that Midway Race Break. But the yellow flag is out for the first time tonight, as there was an incident in the middle of really the entry to turn 3 as it stands.
Yeah, it just looked like that. A bit of a checkup, so to speak. Smalley was checking up for Huffman. Then it is Alfredo ends up just hitting the right rear part of the back bumper, hooking the 42, and just calamity for everybody else. Surprising this is the first caution flag of the night, but man.
You look and see some of the names that got swept up in that incident. A few of note: Blake Reynolds was one of the first to go around. The 42 machine of Kyle Smalley was caught up in this. Brandon McKissick, that'll be big for the points as McKissick gets caught again in this wild race. Austin Craven had nowhere to go. He and Blake Reynolds with completely torn up front ends in this wreck. A few drivers swept up. It was, looks like Alfredo and I believe Austin Dillon, who are the 2 remaining Team Dillon Esports drivers and Team Dillon Management drivers still in tonight's race.
Yeah, and that has absolutely huge implications here as well, because that puts Zach Novak in a good spot now because of the time of the caution flag. But as well, keep in mind, drivers made it about 25-ish laps on fuel, give or take, for the most part. In other words, it might be a fuel mileage race, and we might see a lot of drivers have to duck down and top off for fuel before we go back and away.
Be very interesting to see how everybody plays this later on in the race, as Clampett leads just about everybody down pit road. Only car I think that stayed down is the 42 of Smalley that was swept up in that wreck, and a few of the other cars that are sort of stuck. However, I also believe that Zach Novak should get the free pass to be back on the lead lap after the speeding penalty. So that yellow effectively just became the 90s get out of jail free card.
Absolutely is the perfect opportunity, and it'll be interesting though if he elects to, or should I rather say if Moas elects to stay up towards the front and keep track position, or if he elects to rejoin his teammate Zach Novak, then push his way forward through the field and work together that way. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that. It's not unprecedented, but going to be interesting how this will all play out here.
As Novak gets on the gas and gets back around, it was Clampett, then Freenas, then Heater, then Williams, then Stanford, your first 5 out of pit road. And while we have a moment, we'll remind you of everything happening in the world of Podium Esports and of iRacing over the course of the next few days. Tomorrow night, it is the season debut for the Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series from Texas Motor Speedway. The stars of the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoor Truck Series take to iRacing in their own series, organized by Jordan Anderson of Jordan Anderson Racing, Tim Self and Austin Wayne Self of AM Racing, and NASCAR Pole Position, Roar Magazine, and Eric E. Steps Out of the Groove. A whole host of characters coming to twitch.tv/Podium Esports tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Also available on Eric E. Steps Out of the YouTube, or Out of the Groove channel on YouTube as well. Then Friday night, PCA Sim Racing from Road America and the Subaru Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. You'll see Rallycross at 6 on iRacing, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. You'll see PCA at 7:40 p.m. Eastern, the season finale of Series 4 from Road America on the iRacing Esports Network. Saturday, it's the IndyCar iRacing Challenge from Circuit of the Americas, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBCSN, NBC Sports, and the NBC Sports app as well. Then Saturday night, the Rowdy Energy Super Select Series comes to action one more time on Speed 51's Facebook page and speed51.com. They are live from Five Flags Speedway as they continue their series and begin the second half of that campaign. Then Sunday, we've got a two-for in the podium world as well. It starts with the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series from Talladega Superspeedway at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1, and the Fox Sports app. And then Sunday night will be the Virtual California Festival of Speed, the send-off for PCA Spring Season, a special one-off event, which will see a lot of the Porsches, the GT3s, GT4s, and GTEs tackle the road course at Auto Club Speedway. Green flag for that coverage will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So plenty of iRacing in many ways, shapes, and forms this week for you, Justin Prince. You got plenty of different areas which you could like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very curious to see how the pro drivers do with Saturday Thunder in the Pro Invitational Series, to be honest, to see how they handle Talladega, because if it's anything like we've seen with last night's replacement series race and what we've seen so far tonight, I think we're in for a treat on Saturday night for Saturday Night Thunder, as well as on Fox and FS1 and the Fox Sports app on Sunday.
Plenty of action, and I think especially if you are Austin Dillon in the 03, you're going to be going racing on Sunday afternoon. And do you try and take anything from this and learn about what you may expect on Sunday in Talladega? They've not gone plate racing yet in the Pro Invitational Series. It'll be a first for them, so could maybe take a few notes here, much like what some of the replacements drivers did last night.
Yeah, exactly, and I brought up that possibility last night, and I think absolutely, if you're Austin Dillon, you take note of what some of the limitations may be in the sim, what you can do compared to what you can do in real life. Try and make sure you know those differences in distance that you might have compared to how your real-world car is in what it is in the sim. It's going to be interesting to see how drivers like Dillon do and others who have been racing on the iRacing service on these super speedways and see how well they perform. I think one thing to note, though, James, remember, most of the drivers pit on lap 25 and lap 26 last run on green flag. Take a look. Everyone, for the most part, is topping off.
Everybody, for the most part, coming in just because it's going to be that close. Even if you are here on lap 40, it takes you to about maybe lap, call it 70 or so, which I think makes you okay if we get a green-white checker. But no surprise that these drivers are just making sure that they get enough fuel to get to the end.
And that's an if as well. I want to be surprised if we see a situation where if we get a long run, fuel mileage comes into play a little bit here. In other words, if you get a caution flag, it gives you a chance to save fuel. If it stays green, wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of fuel saving on the short run to make sure you have enough fuel to make it to the end, and then it'll get interesting from there on out.
It'll be very interesting to see how it pans out amongst these front few drivers. Everybody came in just about. There was no question about it. Everybody in this field topped off. They know how close they're going to be if we go green the rest of the way. But I think in all fairness, Justin Prince, can we really expect to go green for the rest of this race in the final 25 laps?
I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure. I doubt it, to be honest, either, too, because just on the nature of super speedways, once the intensity level picks up, once drivers feel they're comfortable to make it towards the end, James, that's where you see the potential of incidents and big ones and accidents. So if we get to that point where things ramp up quickly intensity-wise, that's where the caution comes down. They're already hitting each other trying to line up.
And one car goes down to the inside there and gets sent into the fence. Couldn't tell who that was initially. It was Eric Heater. Eric Heater in the 55 machine. No idea what happened there. He just got sent from Alexander Krunke, I think, who just, quite frankly, was not paying attention at all.
Yeah, just carried way too much speed. Didn't realize that they were already lining up, and that is definitely going to hurt some of the speed a little bit here, but we're going back towards the mid-2000s, why don't we, for this start? Everybody single file this time.
Everybody single file here at Talladega. Pace car is off. Logan Clampett will lead the field to the green, and it is a single file restart. Everybody's going to start shuffling up. Some cars trying to duck down to the bottom, and we will see how everything shapes up at the front of this field. Everybody up on the wall to make sure that you can't get past on the outside. Waiting for Logan Clampett to get back onto the gas pedal to go green flag racing. He does. We are back on the way. The dude wipes 175 at Talladega. There goes Nick Olson to the bottom. Who else will follow behind him? Oh, just about everybody. And as a matter of fact, they all get down to the bottom. The first 10, 15 cars, only cars stuck on the outside. Alexander Krunke, who slides all the way back as Anthony Alfredo splits the middle and begins to charge towards the front.
And already drivers are thinking, can we get the track position to make sure we can contend towards the end here? And it looks like they're trying to split everybody up. Lots of different drivers in this order in trouble. Nearly indeed trouble.
As everybody goes sideways, they all try and save it, and somehow, as cars wreck a little bit further back in this field, I saw a few around, but we stay green flag racing at the front of this field. Clampett and Huffman now leading this train to the yellow flag finally out as we go back and find out what happened to bring out the yellow flag. Looks like it may have been Eric Stanford in the 11 that started everything and managed to get down onto the apron and save it, but couldn't quite say the same for the 10 of Steve Durham or the 13 of Ryan Kendrick.
Yeah, Durham, when he was trying to move up, gives some space for Stanford, I think. He ended up getting clipped by the driver behind, who was McCauley, on the right front fender. See this on the replay, and just everybody else behind starts to have to dodge. Keep an eye right towards Durham. And what happens here? You already have Stanford coming through turn 3, going down to the apron, getting loose. He comes back up to the bottom line. And then right here, Durham tries to give space, gets clipped, then trouble.
They bounce off the fence and bounce up into the wall, and two more cars largely out of contention for the victory tonight in the Dude Wants 175. Briar LaPrade just got by on the inside. It was very close for the 19 machine. That must have been a heart in throat moment for Patriot Briar as he only managed to escape by a fraction, maybe 5 or 6 inches at best. Otherwise, he was about to go spinning straight up into the fence and pick up enough damage to end his campaign for the win.
Yeah, that could have been absolutely catastrophic. But here's the thing with the time at the caution flag. Now, it makes things more interesting with those fuel numbers we talked about, because now you're shutting off the engine if you were smart, letting the car coast, trying to hold in the clutch. Don't be surprised if a couple drivers elect to top off and elect to go to the back of the field. That's what some are doing.
A few more drivers in, led by, I believe, Andrew Frieda is in the 88, is the first one to come down. Eric Heater is in, Greg McConey, Alex Chamberlain, Austin Dillon. Looks like he stayed out as everybody shuffles in and begins to work their way on pit road.
Yeah, and this gives them the extra benefit here when you think about this too, James, to being able to push a little bit harder for the closing stage of the race, and in turn gets a chance to say repair damage if you're Moas, and LaPrade with that right rear. Spend some time to make sure the car has as much speed and aerodynamics left in that race car if you elect to. It's a smart move, I think. If you're in the back half of the field or in the teens, why not? Get some more fuel in that race car and get yourself that extra benefit of not having to save as much as some of the others.
And it's not like track position is necessarily the most important thing at a track like this. One of those cases where you can sit in the back still, and I think you've got enough time. You've got over 20 laps. In a field this size, there's plenty of time to get to the front and avoid all the issues as we see some of the cars stuck on pit road. Blake Reynolds, Jose Solis Jr., and we know Lucas Cram is done for the night. Schuldish, I don't know what happened to the tube machine, but he may well be trying to repair engine damage as well. Reynolds, we know, got caught up in that incident and tried to avoid getting taken out there at the end, but just got swept up in turn 3 and picked up heavy damage and is probably, if not outright done for the night, not terribly far away from being done for the night.
Yeah, it takes at least 35 minutes to repair an engine. Let's put it that way, because you're essentially putting a brand new motor in the race car. I don't blame some drivers for waiting if they elect to do that, but at the same time, you have to think. Points are valuable, and for some of these drivers, it could be the difference between contending for a top 5 in the championship and finishing outside the top 10 by the end of the season. By the way, Solis for those wondering, was involved in the first caution flag where Alfredo hit his left rear and he blew his motor.
So that explains what happened to Sheldon, and it's Logan Crampett who hangs out in front and leads us as we continue Dega week here in the iRacing world. One of the most popular weeks, I think, in iRacing, especially mid-season, as we see the Richmond Raceway driver Zach Novak come in for service along with Alec Chamberlain. Another car in, looks like the 25 of John Midget is in. Looks like the 69 and Nick Hughes also in for service. So a few more drivers just trying to top off and make sure they're good to go to the end.
Yeah, but absolutely. Again, it's a call I like if you don't have track position, and allows in some cases teammates to hook back up, reset their strategy, and kind of refocus on where they go the rest of this race. If you're one of the drivers who stayed out during this caution flag, it's because you either have that track position or have drivers you already feel comfortable with around you to work towards the end of the race, or feel more comfortable playing, say, more defense to the people trying to attack in the end of the race compared to, say, trying to push forward yourself.
I wonder how things are going to shake out once we get back to green flag racing. As we see a lot of drivers already on the apron trying to save and conserve. Just looking back to the field, I hear absolutely nothing from Kyle Smalley's car, so very likely that he's trying to clutch and coast. Looks like Greg McConey's in the same boat. A lot of these drivers just riding that clutch pedal and making sure rather that they don't burn up any more fuel than they need to get around. Every last drop could be crucial depending on how this plays out.
Absolutely, and it's very vital you do it regardless of the situation, quite frankly, at Talladega, because you never know if you need those extra couple tenths of a gallon in the fuel tank for the end of the race. There have been so many races on the iRacing service, regardless of series, regardless of car, which come down to being able to conserve such as this. There's the other option too, remember, James, of, say, shutting off the engine completely. There's the argument, though, that it burns a little bit more if you elect to shut off the engine and then refire because, of course, the spark plugs that reignite the engine. So that's why there's, in some cases, you might hear drivers completely shut off the race car. Others feel they may be able to just hold in the clutch the whole way around the racetrack, as we're seeing.
Lights will likely come off of the pace car next time by. And don't forget that if you're in chat, you can use the hashtag #AskTheBooth to see if you want to get any sort of good questions out of us. We obviously are not going to answer everything, but reasonable questions, interesting questions, we'll take the time to chat about here. And especially at Talladega, you've got a little bit of time to talk about some things and talk about setups. I think one of the ones that jumps out to me over the past week is lights are off on the pace car was the mic question that we got. I want to say it might have been during the Truck Series Rumble at Richmond Raceway, in which we were all asked about the mic setups, and we found out, Justin Prince, that your Blue Yeti had been hanging out upside down all these years and no one even knew.
Oh man, I was wondering if you were going to bring that up at one point. Yeah, for those that are wondering, apparently the Blue Snowball, for those to tune in, say, on the, or Blue Yeti, I should rather say, for those tuned into the NBC SM broadcast, seen Marty Snyder's, that's the proper way, which is mic facing upward, mute button facing towards your direction. The way I was setting up was essentially talking to the top of the mic. So for those that, how do I put this? Sounded like I was in the middle of a cave at some point. Maybe is the best way? There's your answer. So for those that are looking at their Blue Yetis, time to fix them if they're wrong.
I'd almost say just make it easier and go with my setup, which involves the audio interface and a standard dynamic microphone just to save yourself the problem. But in either case, you get the sound that you at the end of the day, and it's not crazy to have your mic mounted that way. I think for those that are unacquainted with the mic setups, there are booms, gigantic arms that can reach over desks and drop the mic right in front of your face. It's sort of the equivalent of a basketball hoop that hangs from the ceiling, as opposed to one that has supports underneath and a stanchion there to make sure that everything's supported from the bottom. Is We wait for the cars to get back around, and we can wait to get back green flag racing. It will be lap 47 when we go back to it of 65. Clampett, then Huffman, Bell, Ramos, RJ Williams, Nick Olson, Brandon McKissick, Colby Wells, Anthony Alfredo, Braxton DeWeese, your top 10 in this race. Pace car down to the apron and down to pit road momentarily. Logan Clampett in control. Double file restart here for this field. Landon Huffman, who made himself a presence in the middle of this race and I think has grown more comfortable with each passing lap at the front of this pack, and particularly to try and challenge Logan Clampett for the race lead as we go back racing in the Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega for the Esports Racing League Premier Series. Clampett gets on the gas pedal. We're back green flag racing at Talladega. Good restart for the number 99. He will clear Alex Bell by about a car length and a half. Landon Huffman, meanwhile, is going to need a little bit more help from Andrew Ramos as everybody starts dropping to the inside. That lane will pick up all the momentum, and it looks like some of these drivers on the top side might be hung out, but Nick Olson jumps to the top side to make it interesting.
Yeah, things are getting a little bit dicey already, and this was to be expected because if drivers feel like they can make it towards the end of the race on fuel, they're going to push as quickly as they can, and that's exactly what they're doing on that top line. They don't have the numbers, I think, quite yet, though, to completely get clear if they get the run.
Nick Olson back down low. A few more drivers, though, have jumped up top. Colby Wells is there. Braxton DeWeese is there. Everybody bouncing at the back end of this lead train. And Logan Clampett still putting vice grips on the front end of this field. He is your leader as we complete lap 47 at Talladega, working our way within 15 laps to go, although there are 3 green-white checkers that we have available, so if we need them, they will be there for the drivers. We may go longer than 65 laps. Here comes Alex Bell to the top side, jumps right in front of Landon Huffman, who has nowhere to go, so he'll push the 15 up to the front. The 7 machine is also there. Andrew Ramos sitting right behind Huffman in the event things go haywire amongst those front 2.
Yeah, a lot of diciness there. It almost looked like Huffman didn't want to give the shove to Bell, but he had no choice. He was either try and split Bell and risk going 3 wide, or give him the shove, try and see if it works. Had to go with the secondary option, but now that top line already developing 6+ cars and another 3 trying to join the back end of it.
Oh, they just about shuffled the 15 out of the way. They're going 3 wide. Landon Huffman stuck in the middle with nowhere to go. Big bump there from Andrew Ramos to Alex Bell, who's now all alone on the top side. RJ Williams, all of a sudden, has come down on the inside line to become that second car right behind Logan Clampett. And they are 3 wide further back as Austin Dillon is all the way up top.
And it looks like Dillon trying to retreat back and regroup things. Didn't have anyone to work with him on that top line. But it seemed, we talked about it just moments ago. Seemed like drivers didn't want to work with Bell. They don't want to work with Olson either.
Didn't want to work with Olson either, at least those 2 up at the very top. Huffman and Ramos don't. Meanwhile, Bell will fill that hole in the middle and jump in to get behind the number 24 and push him back towards the front. Big momentum for that middle lane as they draw even with Logan Clampett in turn 1.
And look what's coming in the backdrop. Kyle Smalley and Zach Novak are both charging their way now in the middle line. They were in the back half of the field just a couple laps ago.
Everybody beginning to make moves towards the front. Here comes Olson. They get a big run. There goes Zach Novak up top. Olson and Alex Bell to the inside to control that lane as the 24 now takes the race lead.
And this is going to be absolutely hectic. This is around the time when things start to get crazy here at Talladega. And now it looks like Olson's trying to play the lanes. Very risky, though, with his package.
Have no idea how he didn't get run into as they jump around all in those first 2 lanes, those first 2 grooves. And Logan Clampett jumped to the outside to get a nose out in front of Alex Bell and did just that at the line, but it's still side by side with the 15 exiting 2 for the race lead.
And the crazy thing about trying to block that big of a run there, James, was it worked if it was before 2018, 2019. With this current package, you get so big of runs, if you try and block, you're likely getting shuffled out or getting major contact. So you need to be careful when it comes to those types of moves, and that's why some drivers elect to just ride around the bottom side and see how things play out. Trouble!
There goes Austin Dillon and Anthony Alfredo tried to save it and then bounced off a few cars. The yellow flag comes out again at Talladega as the 2 other Team Dillon drivers get swept up in this mess. And We'll take a look at the replay momentarily to show you what happened, but it all started with Austin Dillon in the middle of the tri-oval, just about. They were coming towards that little dog leg to bring you back to the start-finish line, and it just looked like a little bit of contact between Zach Novak and 83 as those two bounced off each other. I think Novak was trying to get in line and thought he was more clear than he actually was. He makes contact with the three. The three goes around inside the tri-oval, bounces off Anthony Alfredo. He spins absolutely nowhere for Andrew Ramos to go, who had just been up at the front of this field, mind you, not too long ago. Dillon actually, I think, might have gotten the better of it compared to his Team Dillon driver, Anthony Alfredo, who was down on the apron, but bounced off plenty of cars and the fence a little bit too.
It almost looked like from the multiple different angles that Austin Dillon was trying to check up there. At the same time, though, Zach Novak wanted to get to that middle line and didn't realize there was that checkup. Just things happen so quickly, and that, I think, it's just a product of too many things happening at the exact same time to basically cause the big one at Talladega. Most of the field now with damage.
Yeah, Jimmy Mills had nowhere to go either. He tried to go on top and just got pinched in between Anthony Alfredo and I believe the 11 of Eric Stanford, who were right there and didn't really leave Mullis much room to go. Brian LaPrade, I think, got into the back of the 46 as well. A lot of names that we had talked about at the front of this field with plenty of damage, and the one who has consistently stayed up there and may now be the favorite, I think, that 99 of Burton Kligerman Esports, Logan Clampett, in control at the front.
Yeah, he's been one of the more aggressive drivers at this racetrack tonight, and he's been one of the drivers people have been willing to work with when he's even been aggressive. So I think he's absolutely gotten himself a great position. He's in the catbird seat, but don't forget you have some of the drivers who have already raced in some competition here in ERL competition throughout the week. For example, Colby Wells, he was the man who won the Sportsman's race on Monday. He's up to third position with all of this.
Wells, who we barely have talked about, at least at the front of this field, is one of the ones who has decided to make that late charge. Kyle Smalley, remember, he was sideways not too long ago in that wreck that featured Blake Reynolds and Austin Craven in turn 3, that first big yellow of the evening. Now here he is in the top 5. R.J. Williams has been around for a good bit of this, and no surprise to see the number 37 near the front of the field, too. I think he's gotten stronger as this race has carried on. Landon Huffman stuck on pit road, his teammate who got caught up in that most recent incident. And now we wait to see where everybody else will stack up in all this.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take quick looks around to see if there's any sort of alliances, and to be quite frank, there might not be too many of them left at this point. So at this rate, your friends are where you find them, so to speak. If you've got an undamaged race car, you're likely going to get a push. If you got damage such as Kyle Smalley, good luck. You might get single filed out.
You find out who your friends are in times like these, Talladega, and the question is going to be who's going to be the one that drops everything and proverbially runs out and cranks up their car for you to help you get to victory lane. That, I think, is the big question. And maybe the other big question here, although I think most drivers in this case should be good now, don't think anybody else is going to be wondering whether or not they'll make it on fuel, and these yellow flag labs certainly will help. My hunch is that we may get a rash of yellows all the way up until the end.
Here's the thing, though. Some of the drivers, such as R.J. Williams in the 37, if you listen on the onboard, he's trying to shut off the engine, let the car roll, hold in the clutch, restart the engine, fire it right back on up. Take a listen.
Incredibly silent. No surprise there. You see a few drivers just trying to play this game well enough to make sure that they don't end up out of fuel at the very end of the race, which will be the most important thing of all, as we can tell you that Andrew Freenash has pulled it behind the wall and is done for the night, and likely in the same boat as Blake Reynolds, Jose Solis Jr., Lucas Cram, Eric Stanford picked up a ton of damage in that incident. Jimmy Mullis just parked it on pit road. Andrew Ramos is there. Brian Kendrick just came off of pit road. Anthony Alfredo just sort of hanging out. But, Alfredo, for all the damage he took in that incident, I think maybe all right enough by comparison And when you compare the way some of these plate races play out in iRacing, you think back to, in particular, the Podium Esports Daytona 500 from February jumps out to me. There were so many drivers who had some form of damage in the top 5, top 10, and all managed to come away with really strong finishes in that race. So maybe not a surprise in that case that we see Alfredo trying to push it, because you never quite know how things are going to pan out here. You could end up with all that rear end damage like he has and still find yourself in victory lane if things pan out the right way. And that's much, much, much more likely here than it is just about anywhere else in NASCAR. It's not a pipe dream like it would be if you were at, say, maybe in Atlanta or a Martinsville or somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, because you never know what's going to happen with the lead pack first off, or if anything happens on the white flag lap, you might be able to charge your way forward. But second, you mentioned some of that damage on that race car. He has the benefit of some of the other drivers you talked about, like Austin Dillon. He's going to be right up and towards his direction as well. Chance they can work together. They're going to be affected, yes, on the straight line speed. That's the main concern, though, since they're going to have that damage going to be hurting them at this point. But remember, you have to think there's been a lot of drivers who have had to come down for repairs. They're in a much better fuel situation still. I know we keep on harping on this, but if you get multiple GWCs, there's a chance some of the top front runners, if they didn't save enough, would have to sacrifice position. It happened last night in the replacement series with Jordan Erickson.
Something you have to be at least cognizant of. Maybe not necessarily watching it like a hawk, but at least have somewhere in the back of your mind as the lights should go off on the pace car this time by. And we will go back to green flag racing on lap 56. So 10 laps to go scheduled. But again, 3 green-white checkers available for these drivers if they need them. So not totally out of question that we may see a few of those come into play at the very end of tonight's race, just with the way the second half of this race in particular has panned out. As we remind you that tonight's coverage of the Dude Wipes 175 for the Esports Racing League Premier League at Talladega is brought to you by Dude Wipes. First time Dude Wipes is associated with the ERL in any way, shape, or form. And quite frankly, if you want all of the cleanliness and none of the stink, go to dudewipes.com and head to dudeproducts.com too and order Dude Wipes today. Get on board with all of the products from Dude Products. Plenty of different assorted products beyond the Dude Wipes available on their website too. Toilet bombs, bundles, deodorant, body wash, face wipes, shower gel, all sorts of things. Even t-shirts, underwear, and hats. I wonder maybe if that shirt that Anthony and Alfredo had might be available on the website too.
Yeah, kind of curious. I think we can try and fact check that real quickly. But it'd be interesting to see if he can come away with a victory. But remember, they're all fighting for that care package tonight. And some of these drivers, I think, are going to have that little bit of extra aggressiveness to win that package tonight.
Can confirm here that the polo that Anthony was wearing on Saturday is indeed available, I think, on the website. So you can head over to dudeproducts.com for more information. And yes, a good point that you make there, Justin Prince. Winner will receive a Dude Products Care Pack. So a little bit of a prize to go up there and try and fight for in this race. As Clampett and Alex Bell will lead them back to green.
By the way, to answer the t-shirt question, you can get a black one if you want, James.
Oh, there's a black one? Shoot, you're giving me options now, Justin Prince. Blowing my mind over here. I don't know if I'm ready for that at this time. I got to make sure I process what's happening right in front of me first. As Logan Clampett will lead them to green one more time. He's been one of the best cars in this field all night. He's very, very good at restrictor plate races, especially when it comes to controlling the front of this field. And as they go, the 45 of Colby Wells did not. He stacks up in front of RJ Williams and in front of the 87 of Brandon McKissick. And I wonder if that might have been a strategic move just to try and get a run on Logan Clampett. They've got a good push coming out of 2. They may well get behind the 99 and send him in front of the 42 down the back.
And look at that, Kyle Smalley, despite that damage on the back end, getting a major run with the help of Coley McCauley. The problem is, though, that damage just died out that run to the wrong point.
Just about right at the end of turn 3. Couldn't really go much of anywhere as Clampett continues to lead that inside line. He's got absolutely no competition. Now that the Richmond Raceway Esports drivers are broken up, He doesn't really have any competition. They work so well together, and then Jimmy Mullis got caught up in that incident that brought out the yellow flag last time out. And now it's Zach Novak, who is still up at the front of this field in the 6th spot, but all by his lonesome. He's going to have to find someone else to work with to try and finish this race off. The question, I think, Justin Prince, is if you are Novak, who do you look to as a running mate, and who do you adopt as a teammate for these final 10 laps?
Whoever's willing to push, essentially, at this point. Whoever you feel comfortable with, and whoever you have a good rapport with might be willing to help you. I think Novak knows that these two drivers have damage. It's just the matter of he's got no one that's willing to go up and create a third line to drive around them, and that's what's hurting them. Don't be surprised if he cuts to that bottom or tries to go up to the top with Chamberlain.
Interesting questions all around as Clampett continues to lead over Alex Bell. Kyle Smalley up there on the top side. Colby Wells is there to 57 laps up complete on the board, working 58, coming to 5 to go in the not too distant future in the Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega. They've strung out on the inside at South Fork Course. There's a big move. There's a big move for the 15 of Alex Bell and the 45 machine of Colby Wells. They got a huge run coming out of 2. They go to the outside. The 15 will be clear of Logan Clampett, and both of them will drop down in front of the 99 in turn 3.
That was so close to the razor's edge, and that's not what you want to see. There are tandem drafting on the bottom of the racetrack. There are so many risks when you try and do that. If you make any mistake, you can take everybody with you to the back.
But that's the kind of risk I think you have to take, given how strong Clampett's been, who immediately responds by going up in front of Cody McCauley to lead some form of train. He's got the outside working with him now, and it may well be incumbent upon Bell to watch to see when the 99 comes and jump up to block that run. The 15 will stay down to the bottom, at least for the moment, so the 99's almost there, even with the 45, who side drafts the ever-living daylights out of Logan Clampett to make sure the 99 can't get the run to go up side by side with the 15, but it might be to no avail because here comes Clampett anyway.
Yeah, he's got to hope that McCauley's got enough speed built up with the suck-up to try and give some pushes here to try and get clear. If not, hope Novak tries to shuffle him out. It looks like McCauley might have enough speed. It's just a matter of, does he have the temps for the next 6 laps?
That's the question. Can you push Logan Clampett that hard, especially with the damage on the right front of that car as Clampett goes back to the bottom and back to control of this race with 6 laps to go in the Dude Wipes 175. It is Bell who now rides behind Clampett. Meanwhile, Novak with a big shove, and it may be deja vu just off of what we saw between the 15 and the 45 a few laps ago. Novak tried to get the push to the 62 McCauley, but it just broke down as they came down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and everybody trying to move out of the way, and lap car's just got in trouble.
Lap car's in trouble behind all this. Yellow flag out. Green, white, checker, finish inbound. The Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega as they all bounced off each other. We'll wait and see what happened. I think it was Austin Dillon who tried to come back up onto the racetrack and just clipped, I think, the 8 and the 42 of Kyle Smalley. Looks like there was some contact between them, and then I think the 57 was swept up, and then Alexander Kreinke and Brandon McKissick, most importantly, who got shuffled way up high, couldn't do anything. He got sort of ping-ponged into as the last car there on the outside and ended up in the fence with the 57 and the 3, and a night to forget for McKissick, who was in position to gain some points on Jimmy Mullis, and likely still will, given the damage that Mullis has on his car, but might not be the finish that McKissick wanted.
Yeah, and I think what happened to Austin Dillon is you've seen some of the bumps on that apron. As soon as he got towards that transition, his car started shooting up the track and just nowhere for him to go. I don't think he meant, of course, to come up on the racetrack at that point, but we've seen him and the 7 machine both duck underneath that yellow line to stay out of the way of the battle for the lead, and instead it ends up being a factor now for what could be a crazy finish.
What will undoubtedly be a crazy finish is Logan Clampett still leads this field, and you talk about someone who just really understands things, and I don't know, but it almost looks like he's taught Boris Cook a few lessons. We saw what Boris was able to do in the final laps of the leaf filter gutter protection replacements iRacing series event at Talladega last night over on the iRacing Twitch channel. Look at what Clampett's been able to do out front on the bottom. Look at the amount of laps that he's led in this race. He's been so good It's going to take 2 or 3 cars running together like what we saw with Alex Bell and Colby Wells to stop the 99. If you leave Clampett to his own devices, I don't know if he wins or if anybody has anything to keep him from winning this race.
Yeah, it looks like Bell and Wells are willing to work together for this finish. That's got to be one of the factors you got to keep in mind of. But here's the thing. You have Novak now going to be able to start on the bottom side. If Wells and Bell hook up, Novak might be able to be willing to push. It's going to be curious to see who your partners now are, with now basically all the clean cars up towards the front.
I feel like this is, I keep thinking of a classic Super Smash Brothers sort of 3-on-1 battle or everybody versus battle, because, you know, Clampett's going to be on his own. With the strength that he's shown, I highly doubt anyone's going to be willing to help him. Everybody else is going to try and gang up on him, and it makes you wonder, was it too early to show his hand, or is Clampett just that good that he doesn't have to worry about it? And does he just have enough plate racing skill that these drivers could do whatever they want to, and he'll still find a way to block that inside or outside lane for the front anyway?
I think at this point, you're basically trying to stop whatever runs. It comes down to a mix of luck and talent at this point, James. If you're hoping that you end up having to try and not have to block 3 lanes, but it might come down to that tonight. Whoever's got the best run down that front straightaway, I think is going to be the winner tonight. It's going to be tough to try and stop them.
Going to be very, very difficult, I think, to stop the 99 machine. But there are drivers who have ability, who have experience. Alex Bell has shown that he's got some prowess if he gets some help from somebody. Colby Wells proved himself a very versatile pusher in that last green flag road. We know what Zach Novak can do. No introduction necessary for the defending eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion. RJ Williams worked very well with Landon Huffman. Granted, those two are teammates, but there's certainly something I think we can see. And Riley Pratt was up there at the beginning of this race, pushing Mullis and Novak. If he gets back up to the front, there's a natural Toyota teammate that may want to link up with Novak, and those two may go somewhere depending on how this pans out.
I don't think there's enough time for Mullis to get through so many cars, though. That's the thing. It's already lining up for what could be a green-white checkered finish. Whether it's a natural one or one of the first attempts, it's the question. Whoever's up inside that top 10, you're in the best position, I think, James, to come away with the checkered flag.
Lights stay on the pace car here, and I believe in that case that may push us to a first green white checkered. I think it does. Restart would come no earlier than, yes, lap 65. So we should be looking at our first green white checker attempt of this race, and this is where that fuel strategy comes into play. Looking at the numbers, if 30 is the one where you need to be a little bit worried, Clampett, Bell, and Wells all on 23 lap stints on tires and fuel, and they are the ones who have been out on track the longest, along with Austin Craven in the 30. Everybody else a little bit lower on that number. McCauley's run for 20 laps, 18 laps for Zach Novak. The ones I think in really good shape, Nick Olson, Briar LaPrade, and Braxton DeWeese, along with Eric Heater and Landon Huffman, all 10 and 11 laps respectively. They are without question good to go no matter what happens on this track.
I think with the amount of caution flags since the last pit stop stint for the top runners who have stayed up towards the front, I think they may be okay for a couple GWCs based on saving fuel. Here's the thing, though. It's going to be the matter of, did they save enough to have one more? That is the major, major question mark, I think, for some of these drivers potentially now. If you are a driver up towards the front and you ended up not topping off during the first of the couple caution flags in the past 15, 20 laps, you're looking towards your F4 box and hoping you end up getting to the white flag so you don't have to panic of fuel in the late stages of this race.
I think that's the very curious thing about all of this is that we have had yellow flag laps. You would think that the fuel window would have been extended a little bit just because we've been pacing under yellow, and you would think by extension that Clampett and company would be okay if we get a second or even a third green white checker attempt. But of course, this is all obviously a moot point if we get one. And as always, if we get back to the start finish line after taking the green and we get the white flag, the next flag will end the race no matter what happens. So we may end up at a spot where we get the white flag and we race all the way back around. We may get the white and get a wreck and then get a yellow that ends things before we get back to the start finish line. There are a multitude of permutations and combinations that could pan out. As it is official, this will be green, white, checkered attempt 1 of 3, and lights are off on the pace car. So this race will go for at least 66 laps, and it will be Clampett and Alex Bell who lead the field over Wells, McCauley, Novak, Williams, Olsen, LaPrade, Chamberlain, Midget, and DeWeese.
Yeah, and the way things have shaped out, it's given a chance to see some drivers who have been towards the bottom half of the points coming into tonight. Their best chances coming away with the victory. Give a shout out to guys like Chamberlain, plus 17. Midjet, now 13 positions gained. DeWeese, he's got some damage, but has 10 positions gained for the drop of the green flag as well tonight. It's anybody's race. It's just a matter, though, of how well do these guys get off the jump, and how well does that middle line and potentially top line develop towards the final lap and a half.
And how much do these drivers bounce off each other and end up bouncing into the fence and potentially bringing out another yellow flag? Do we get that before we get the checker? And I think especially McKissick's an interesting case too, or at least would have been. There are a few drivers, though, that I think could also take some points from this race and be happy. Novak, Bell in particular could use a few to pull themselves back up in the conversation, but the one maybe in that spot more than anybody else, Braxton DeWeese in the 8 car, currently sitting on 272. He's about 40 back of the points lead. He could use a good run to jump up to the front. He could use a good points. Might not necessarily be about the win as we close in on the end of the spring season for the Esports Racing League Premier Series, as Clampett will lead the field to green. Lights are off in the pace car. It pulls down pit road. Clampett and Bell have control of the inside and the outside lanes respectively. You've got the 45 of Colby Wells behind Clampett, behind Bell. It's the 62 of Cody McCauley. That's your front 4. We'll see who pushes who and how they push as we get back to green flag racing for what could be the final time. And the Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega. Green flag is out. Maybe not necessarily the quickest of starts for Clampett. Big restart there for everybody as Bell decided to drop back and drop in behind the 99, so he wants the inside. Here comes Brian LaPrade, though, to the outside. He's got help all the way up top. Looks like that may be John Midget in the 25, who will go way up top and try and make that third lane work as they come through 2 and onto the backstretch.
Concerned a little bit about the damage and trouble.
All around they go. Yellow flag out. Everybody wrecking all over the place, and we will try it one more time as they immediately fanned out and ended up in trouble. I think this was RJ Williams who's responsible for it. He tried to get just tried to muscle a hole where there wasn't one, bounced down into Zach Novak, then into the 45 machine of Colby Wells, and it was on from there. Williams himself managed to pick up some damage, but Nick Olsen was swept up. I see the 42 of Kyle Smalley get picked up. Zach Novak went for a wild ride all over the place as he bounced off the fence and then some. The 55 machine tried to go down low. Eric Heater tried to avoid everything and just smashed the fence. Everybody spinning, crashing. I think the 45 was caught up in it too. And Greg McConey in the 16. I see sideways here. I think Anthony Alfredo was caught up in this. Just about everybody here. You've got a few modifieds in this field now, Justin Prince.
I think that was more so on Novak than it was on Williams. You've seen the door hip to the right side, and that just shuffled Williams back down into Wells' fender. So lots of drivers now with damage. Logan Clampett and Alex Bell now have the freshest cars in the race, let's put it that way.
I would tend to agree. Clampett's got plenty of space. He's in good shape. Alex Bell also with a very clean race car. Also of note, Novak came over race chat and apologized to everybody for that incident. So the 90 takes responsibility for that particular yellow. And now you really do have a few handful of cars at the front that really are clean and compete. Bell has one. RJ Williams actually has a decent amount of damage to the front end. Austin Craven, we know how torn up that 30 gets, but here he is running in P4. Nick Olsen Olsen might be one to watch. He's got a relatively clean number 24 machine. The rear end has a bunch of damage, but the front end is good. That might be useful when it comes to the end of this race. Alec Chamberlain has absolutely not a scratch on his number 98. He might be one to watch in all of this. Braxton DeWeese has a little bit of damage on the front end. Landon Huffman has some damage too. Nick Hughes in the 69 we haven't talked a lot about. And Brian LaPrade, either minimal damage on the front end, but enough to where it might slow them down, but they may also be very useful when it comes to pushing. And Lucas Cram, who just blew the motor and got too hot, he's back in this race. Damage to the rear end, but the front end also clean on that 44. He could be a useful pusher to someone if he can get up near the front of this.
Absolutely, and wonder if we can take a look at what happened to DeWeese. He could have been very demolished, mind you, after what happened on the back straightaway. We'll try and take a look at this. Just take a look at some of the craziness that happened with DeWeese to try and avoid what happened here, and take a listen as well as the carnage ensued.
He bounces around and is just sort of sitting in line, and then you see the wreck break out in front of him, and DeWeese sees it all happen, gets on the brakes, nearly gets into Alec Chamberlain, and just sneaks through and found his way down on the bottom in one of those classic patented Red Seas parted moments. Braxton DeWeese finds his way all the way down to the inside wall on the backstretch and found a way to get around all that. And we just talked about him no less than 5 minutes ago and how he could use a good points night. If he can maintain his spot up here at the front of the field, he stands to gain a significant amount of points on Brandon McKissick and on Jimmy Mullis, who came into tonight ahead of him in the point stand.
Yeah, that dodge down the back straightaway may just have kept him in the championship hunt. If he ends up hitting that 19 machine of Brian LaPrade, he ends up potentially tumbling down the board. Now all his main competition inside that top 5, except for Bell, are essentially either modifies, laps down with damage, or have had abysmal days. Guys with McKissick we've already talked about. Mullis going to lose a lot of points in that positioning. DeWeese might have just saved his chances for the championship.
As DeWeese continues to shuffle around and I think just hide in P7 more than anything else at this stage, but that might not necessarily be the worst strategy in the world, as Clampett, Bell, Midget, Williams, and Olsen are your top 5 as it stands. And you completely look at this group of drivers, maybe not a surprise in a sense that the folks here, we haven't really talked about them all that much, save for maybe Clampett and Bell. But John Midget spent most of this race at the back. R.J. Williams has been a factor when Huffman's around, but he hasn't exactly been up this high. Nick Olsen rode around in that backpack. Alec Chamberlain has been nowhere near the front. And all of a sudden, you get to the very end of this race, and you have a completely different set of characters from the ones that we had at the beginning.
Yeah, Chamberlain's in a great position because he's got absolutely no damage, it appears, on that 98 machine, no visual damage. So he's in one of the best spots to potentially pass some of the drivers who got damage in even that last caution flag. Williams will be down on straight line speed at the start on the green flag for this GWC. Chance he can try and pass him, try and get in front of him. Chance he can try and get around Olsen a little bit. Olsen's in a decent spot. So there's a great chance Chamberlain might come away with the top 5 if he plays his cards right here, depending on what happens around him.
Just depends on how all this shakes out, as Nick Olsen might have the cleanest front end along with Chamberlain. Chamberlain, I think, though, may have the best car outright outside of Logan Clampett in the 99 and maybe Alex Bell in that bunch too. I think the 15 is largely okay, but that's the kind of race we've had in this Dude Williams 175 at Talladega. 3 cars by my count that I think are clear and completely free of damage.
Give or take, that's around the rough estimate I've had as well in terms of Bell, Clampett, and of course Chamberlain. We've already seen some drivers without front noses trying to get the best points finish they can to this point. Now it becomes the question, how does this start end up going? We've seen how crazy it got before with how many drivers were trying to pinch one another and try and build up side draft momentum. Might see the same here at the start this time around because it might be some drivers' best shots of getting the win.
By my count, within the session, there are still, I believe, 22 cars. Of those 22, I believe it is 17 that are still rolling on the racetrack. So we've lost about a third of the field, just 2 incidents. We'll have about 16, 17 cars racing for the victory when we get back to green flag racing, which may not be too much longer from now. We'll wait to see what the pace car does and what the lights on top of that Ford Mustang say, and it will give us a sense as to whether or not we go green next time by, or we need to wait one more lap. But you see the cars beginning to form up in double file, and the lights are off. So our second attempt at a green white checker will come on lap 70. We will go potentially to lap 71 and maybe, just maybe, get this race finished. Or if they wreck before we get the white flag and we get another yellow flag, we'll have one more attempt at a green white checker finish. It's Clampett, then Bell, Midget, Williams, Olsen, Chamberlain, DeWeese, Craven, Huffman, Nick Hughes, your top 10 for, again, what could be the last restart.
It's the big if, though, on what happens here once again, especially down that back straightaway, because if we see anyone have that little bit of a push-up, especially since, remember, some drivers might be on older tires still in the front of the field, and there's that chance you can drift up on corner exit in turn 2 and also have a bit of trouble trying to turn in turn 3, it might get tricky. It's to the point where you can see so many drivers are still concerned about the fuel as well. This is the longest they've had to run, even with the caution laps factored in. It could get wild here.
I wonder if Nick Hughes might be in the best spot of all. Pitted 5 laps ago and on 4 fresh tires. We know it doesn't matter all that much at Talladega, but certainly something to keep in the back of your minds if this plays out in his favor. He's got the freshest rubber out of anybody in this top pack, along with Nick Olsen and Braxton DeWeese, who came in 14 laps ago, right before we hit the beginning of this green-white checker rash and these yellows that have dotted the second half of this race. Lights are off of the base car. Logan Clampett is still your leader. And the question remains, who can outsmart, outfox the 99, and can Clampett hold it down for Burton Kligerman Esports effectively all by himself up at the front? Doesn't quite have the teammates and the team associations that some of these other drivers in the front of this field do. And with the strength he's had, it will be Logan Clampett versus the world when we go back to green flag racing. They roll through the tribal. We'll wait to see where Clampett goes, how Clampett goes, what kind of run he decides to get on the field or not, and what the runs are for the drivers around him, and how everything stacks up when we get to 1 and 2. He's slow on the gas. He waited just a little bit to go. Didn't really try and move all that much. They're strung out up on that top line. The inside line far more connected, so everybody down to the bottom in good shape as Brian LaPrade goes up top to try and make something happen.
Yeah, I think LaPrade might have tried to jump it there, charged right up to the top line, and this went exactly how Clampett wanted to go. One of the cleanest cars in Bell got shuffled out to the middle of this bottom line, and now he's going to need to hope for some luck. And Clampett, he's just got to defend with some damaged cars behind.
Everybody in line. There goes Nick Olsen to the top side. Looks like one car down to the inside. Austin Craven in the 30 got sent into the fence. He'll come back up onto the racetrack a little bit, and they bring out the yellow flag one more time. So we get one more shot at a green-white checker finish to end this, and makes me wonder if Logan Clampett may be in the best spot of all.
Yeah, it was the 30 of Austin Craven who got absolutely sent, as you talked about, because there was a massive speed differential. Remember RJ Williams and the concern with the damage? Ends up just having to check up and gets a bit of help to the inside and pinballs all the way up to the bottom.
Just a stack of an accordion effect at the back end of this field as they were all trying to sort themselves out into 3. And R.J. Williams had a decent amount of damage to that number 37 machine. And it was a big push from Greg McConaughey that gave Craven the run to get up behind the 37. And then just some contact made as they all checked up to try and not run over each other into the corner. McConaughey gets in the back of Craven, sends him around, and brings out the second yellow in our final attempt at a green-white checker.
And now, you better hope your fuel saving has been very efficient. Let's put it that way, because if you haven't been saving well, you might run out of fuel in the last lap. So this is absolutely going to get crazy again.
Going to be wild as Clampett and Midget are still your leaders, and you don't dare think about pitting now. One more green, white checker attempt when we get back to it, but are you trying to figure out some sort of strategy? Do you know your dance partners at this point? Do you try and get on the radio to find dance partners at this point, just in case, Justin Prince, or is it too late for that?
I think it might be a little bit too late, almost like if whoever's around you is your drafting partner, so to speak. If someone's got fast speed, as talked about, if they're clean enough, you better hope they give you a push. Or you end up trying to give them the ultimate gift of a victory in a care package. So it's, again, whoever's around you who has a clean car, don't be surprised if they are the best drivers to work with now. And here's the problem with how the start cycle through. With the quick caution flag too, James, Olsen with a fairly clean car will now start in third and line up with Bell.
Alec Chamberlain will restart in seventh. Of note, though, a few cars on pit road for service here. Alexander Krenke, Austin Dillon, Cody McCauley, Austin Craven on pit road. And it could be a case where if everything goes crazy at the very front of this field and everybody loses their minds and they all wreck, somebody out of this group may be able to just scoot on by the outside and get past all the madness to win this race. It is something that we cannot rule out at this stage.
I've seen drivers come through from 13th on back before here at Talladega and come away with victories. There's a chance that happens, absolutely, depending on how things develop here again because of how things have went. I think it's a bit more calmer now with some of the drivers with significant damage up at the front, but it's going to get crazy, I think, with the drivers like DeWeese, like Bell, like Olsen, who will try and come away with the checkered flag and Chamberlain.
And let's not forget, we've seen crazier things. It was in the fall 2000 race here that Dale Earnhardt Sr. came from 17th to 1st in the final handful of laps to win the event. So anything is really possible here, and you can't rule out any of the drivers. If you're on the lead lap, you get to start in this bag. Everybody from Austin Craven up has a genuine shot to win this race. That's not any sort of exaggeration because this is Talladega.
Well, that's saying if Austin Craven could get the engine fired up with how hard of a hit he took to that left side wall, but if anything happens, you're in the great position if you're towards the back of trying to dodge. You're hoping for a miracle if you have any significant damage now at this point to try and take the checker flag once more. And again, we've talked about the points implications. The points are going to be crazy after this one.
It's going to be a really big night for Braxton DeWeese, who is going to gain a significant amount on Jimmy Mullis. About 20 points, it looks like, as it stands, if it holds. If it holds. Mullis came into tonight with 312. DeWeese came in with 272. So, you do the math, that'll bring DeWeese up probably about within maybe 20 points of Jimmy with a few races left in the spring season.
Give or take. But it all comes down again to if you can make it to the finish. If anything gets crazy for you, you're panicking at this point. Let's put it that way. In other words, this is going to be insanity once more, once this race gets back underway, James.
Better question, is this madness or is this Sparta?
Both. It is madness as well as Sparta.
Definitive answer from Justin Prince. If anybody ever doubted whether or not we were here, whether or not we were just living a very famous movie, then let Justin Prince assuage all those fears without question. No doubt in his mind which one this is.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's put it this way. If you are one of the drivers who are towards the back and see spinning smoke, you're screaming charge at the top of your lungs and saying, I'm going to go full throttle and hope I get a spot.
And it's just one of those cases where you just go full send. There's so many different variables that are out of your control in a green one checker restart at Talladega that you can have some sort of plan and some sort of strategy, and even then it may not work. There's so much that's out of your hands when you go restrictor plate racing, and there's certainly a little bit of luck involved too. So I guess maybe the best question amongst these drivers, and the one they should be asking the radio, is whether or not any of them have a golden horseshoe to get through whatever madness might occur on this final restart and come home with the checkered flag.
I'm not quite sure if anyone's going to have that. Clamp it again. It's still in the best position, but again, crazy things can happen. If you've earned enough respect from one of your fellow drivers throughout the night, they're going to repay it to you and give you that luck you've been looking for potentially tonight to come in with the checker flag. It's going to get wild. It's going to get wild. It's going to get to where everybody's screaming Sparta as soon as they hit the gas pedal, and they'll be charging full forward with their lances once that green flag flies to try and find any way around that Valvoline Toyota Camry.
I think the question is, who feels like they're going to be the proverbial Leonidas with the arrows blacking out the sun at the end of this? I guess, should we drop spoilers alerts for anybody who might be watching? Although I'd like to think most people have seen that movie at this point, great as it is, old as it is now, too. Wild to think that's almost a 15-year-old movie, Justin Prince.
Is it sad I've heard all of the memes and heard all the main quotes of it and never watched the movie?
Yes, it is, because it's a great movie. Some of the choreography, I think, in particular, Zack Snyder really did an impressive job lining up some of the shots in that film. And that more than anything else, I think, to me, the visuals are what are most impressive about 300.
I'll be quite honest, I live under a rock when it comes to some movies. So these drivers, though, I think are ready to try and overturn some rocks and come in with the checker flag and what should be a crazy one once more. Curious as well, though, James, who will be playing big picture for this finish.
Oh, that was sneaky good. I give you credit on that one. Big picture, motion picture. Who makes a movie out of the finish? If we're just sort of running with that theme, perhaps. So, although I will say, I think if chat is to be concerned, there is a clear favorite amongst the people watching this race. And that is, without question, the 8 of Braxton DeWeese, who has received love in chat pretty much the entirety of the last 10 minutes. All caps, memes, emotes, all over the place. DeWeese currently in 4th. He will be the one pushing John Midget on the outside when we go back green for this final restart. It will be Clampett, then Midget, then Olsen, then DeWeese, then Bell, then Huffman, then Chamberlain, then LaPrade, then Wells, then Smalley. And before we go green, thank you to Dude Wipes one more time for their support of the Dude Wipes 175 at Talladega. But it is all Logan Clampett that they have to beat. One more crack at a green flag finish. We either finish at the line or we get a wreck and a yellow, and it will end under caution as the pace car pulls off of pit road. Clampett has one more opportunity to time this restart whatever way he wants, whatever way he thinks is best. What does he do when we go back green? A slow sort of start. He checked up Nick Olsen, who had to weave and bob just to make sure he didn't run into the back of the 99. Everybody behind Clampett trying to jump this restart. Everybody 2 by 2. Looks like it was a better start for Midget, but he's got that front end damage, so somebody else is going to have to get into that top line and start pushing.
Yeah, don't be surprised if you see Olsen try and shut up right in front of him, try to squeeze him out, in fact.
They tried to squeeze him out. DeWeese is stuck up on the top side. Everybody else down to the bottom, including Alec Chamberlain. I think they're all going to try and dump Midget, as there goes Chamberlain all the way to the inside. He forced his way underneath Braxton DeWeese as 2 cars go to the outside. There goes Clampett up to the top to block. Here comes Nick Olsen down to the bottom.
And this is going to get crazy here, coming to the white flag. Lots of drivers with clean race cars now lined up behind. Clampett's going to have to be really aggressive on the mirror.
No help for Logan Clampett, and there go the 24 and the 15 to the top side. Nick Olsen and Alex Bell back to the point. One flag, one white flag left to go at Talladega. Here comes Alex Chamberlain with a big move from Alex Bell just to clear Logan Clampett by centimeters at best.
And now becomes the question, does Bell stay lined up with Olsen, or does he try and ditch him? He's all over the place trying to defend Clampett.
He straight up blocked Logan Clampett, and there goes the 24. Went down to the apron to try and block Clampett. They make contact down the back straightaway. Here comes Alex Chamberlain through the middle.
Where did he come from? He's got the fastest head of steam. The question is, does he get the push from Bell now?
We'll see who gets the push. They come out of 4 one last time. Clampett and Chamberlain side by side as they exit turn 4. Here comes Bell with the push on the outside. Olsen and the 15 get together. Side drafting as they come through the triangle. They come to the strike. Contact between the front 2. They wreck as they come across the start-finish line. And at the end of it all, it will be Nick Olsen who gets the victory in the Dude Wipes 175 as Chamberlain got tagged right at the end. He had it lined up all the way. And then the 15 of Alex Bell got into Clampett, who got into Chamberlain, who sent those two out of the way. And then it was all Nick Olson in the 15 who were racing for the victory as they came across the start-finish line. And Olson just beat Bell by maybe about a bumper's worth at best as they drag race back to start-finish.
That was absolutely crazy, and it was the craziness I think we were both potentially seeing here. Drivers were told they were allowed to go on the yellow line. There is no specific yellow line rule in ERL competition. However, it was to be used at their own discretion. If they caused an incident from it, they would have been given an end of longest line penalty. Olson tried to use that a couple different times. Didn't work for him down the back straightaway, but once things got crazy, you're essentially thinking, I've got to find any way I can to get my bumper in front of the drivers who were left after what happened.
He just about did himself in coming down the back straightaway. I think that's the most interesting thing to me, is that Olson went down to the apron to try and block Clampett, and Clampett stayed in the middle and just kept his line and drove right up alongside Nick Olson and was clear of the 24 when they got to 3. I thought at that point he may well be in trouble. I'll admit, though, I didn't expect that Clampett and Alec Chamberlain would come together right as they exited the tri-oval and started coming back towards the start-finish line. That's ultimately what gave Olson the win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been Olson's race even if it was above the yellow line, too, because Bell would have had to check up for what was happening in front of him. I got a contact from that. Just got absolutely lucky. You talked about who would get the golden horseshoe. Olson got it towards the checker, then a crazy one.
And just when you think you might be in the right spot, you don't even realize where the right spot is and where you need to be and where the lucky spot actually is. It was so much later than we initially thought in this. You figured that coming out of 4, maybe being in the right spot at the tri-oval might be the place to be. It was not before they exited the tri-oval and were on that final short shoot towards the start-finish line that Nick Olson really took control of this race and made it pretty clear